Good day. I am astrologer Lateesha Hinton with Soul Spread Wisdom, and I am here today to conduct an astrological study of the beautiful comedian Tiffany Haddish. And so today we will be using the ancient tools of astrology as far as understanding the Time Lords and predictive tools that are used to look at the chart and that will herald and give signification of what is to come. And we will look at Tiffany Haddish's birth chart and use these ancient tools in addition to transiting planets and the eclipses to understand how her life has shaped itself in the way that it has. And then we will also, so we're going to look at her childhood. We're going to look at her teen years. We're going to look at 2020, where she had some significant things to happen there. We're going to look at her rise to fame in 2017. We're going to look at her relationship, her marriage in 2008. We're also going to look at her relationship with Common, and then I am going to give my prediction based on the synastry, and also based on the Time Lord of the year that she is in now and upcoming, to identify if there is a herald from the planets that these two will be married. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and share, and leave a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. It will help my channel so much. And let's see what we have here for Miss Tiffany Haddish. Okay, so we have Tiffany Haddish's birth chart here, and she was born December 3rd, 1979 at 8:49 a.m. in Los Angeles, California. Now, her birth time, she gave it to Nadia Shah, and Nadia Shah released it. So we do have that actual birth time for her, which is great, which allows us to conduct this type of detailed study where we will be able to look at the Time Lords and various events that are associated with the house placements. And so without the birth time, we have to disregard where the houses are in the chart. And so the houses are important as it relates to life's events. So when we know where the houses are, when a particular house is highlighted, then it is heralding, it is testifying to gates or doors that are opened in your life for particular life areas. Okay, so with her, we have this information and we are able to really dissect the chart and take a look at her life and see how the planets gave testimony to the promise of her life. So the birth chart for all of us is a chart that indicates the karma for this lifetime. It is the natal promise. So within the birth chart, we can see the promises and potential that one has in their life. So if it is not in the birth chart, then it is not something that we can just speak into existence or believe into existence. For instance, if we have a chart that um, has Saturn and Mars in the second house in debilitation or in fall, and then we have a harsh planet in the 10th house, and some harsh indications or harsh aspects within the 8th house. You know, it would be difficult to say that this will be a millionaire. It will be difficult depending on the placements of the planets. The chart will tell you the potential again, for this person to reach high heights or to be seen publicly, to reach a place of fame. All of this is indicated in the birth chart, and that is super important to know and to look at. And I say that because if we are writing our affirmations, we are writing affirmations to have, you know, uh, a particular type of a career, for instance. Let's say you are writing your a petition because you want to be famous. You're writing your petition to be, you know, a world renowned artist. But there are no placements that support that in the fifth house. There are no placements that support that in the 10th house. Then, you know, it is really a waste of time. It is really futile to do so because the chart again it will testify to the potential, it will testify to the life. And then when we look at the transits that come along, the transits herald, the transits give an announcement that this is the time for this to happen. This is the window for you to step into this. Now, some things we can choose through our will and our volition to walk into or not. And some things that are heralded in the chart by the planetary movements, by the eclipses, by the annual profections of a house, will say that this is something that is fated to happen. You know, and we will see that in Tiffany's chart, in her childhood, something that was fated to happen, but it was heralded and announced through um, some of the transits and eclipses and some of the annual perfections. We are able to see that this was something that was announced beforehand that would be a part of her life and a part of her path. Okay, so after saying all of that, Tiffany was born at 8:49 a.m. and in the astrological study that I conducted on Whitney Houston, I talked about this because Whitney had a night chart. And so Tiffany has a day chart or a diurnal chart. And the way that we are able to indicate this is because we look here, and this is the horizon line. And so it is just like if the when the sun is rising, we can see it come above the horizon, or if it's setting, we can see it go below the horizon. I'm sorry. Um, phone ringing. Let me turn the ringer off. Okay. So for Tiffany, we can see that she has this day chart. And so we know that because the sun is above the horizon line here. So here's the horizon line and her sun is above that. It is in the 12th house, okay? But it is above the horizon. And so the difference that makes is that there are planets that are more powerful and more harmful depending on whether the chart is a diurnal chart, a daytime chart, or a nocturnal chart, a nighttime chart. Okay, so being that this is a daytime chart, the great benefic planet, the strongest benefic planet is going to be Jupiter. So we identify where Jupiter is. So Jupiter is here. Mars will be the greatest malefic planet in this chart. Okay, and that is here. So the sect lords for the day chart will be the Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter. So they operate the strongest in a day chart, and they operate the strongest when they are above the horizon line. That's where they operate with the greatest strength. And Venus and the Moon and Mars operate better in the night charts. and they like to be below the horizon line. They like to be in this quiet underground part of the chart. And so Mars is here above, but we have Venus and the moon below the chart. So this helps her chart. This helps her life that we have the planets here in this order. The other thing that we notice here is that everything in this chart, all of this energy is above the horizon. So this lets us know that she will be a person just from the start, just from originally just looking at this chart at the onset. This is going to be a person who loves to be out, who enjoys being seen, who enjoys talking to people, who has an opportunity or a possibility to really, really do well in the spotlight, to do well in large groups of people and being celebrated and being seen. And so we have the ninth, the 10th, and the 11th and the 12th house, but the ninth, the 10th, and the 11th houses in particular really, really speak to the education and travel, your reputation in the world, and then the groups and the network of people that you have around you who will help your hopes and dreams to be able to manifest. So for Tiffany, she has absolutely had this in her life. And so in her chart, we can see that she has a natal promise already. We can see that she has a natal promise to move her life in this direction, in the direction in which she has moved it. Okay. Um, this house here, the ninth house, has the significant players here. We have the north node of the moon at 3 degrees. We have Mars here at 5 degrees, Jupiter at 9 degrees, and Saturn at 25 degrees. Okay. So this house is packed, packed, packed with energy. And we will see later on how this house really has impacted her life. It really moved her and prepared her for this place of stardom that she actually moved into. We will also see how this house brought challenges to her life as well. Not only did it bring the positive, but it brought challenges to her life. So we can see that um, we have Mars here in Virgo. And Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. Mars is also the ruler of Aries. And we have Mercury here in the sign of Scorpio. And Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. So this is a sextile position between them, between these two houses. But not only is it sextile, but the beauty of it is that this is mutual, called mutual reception, that Mars and Mercury are in. So what that means is that Mars is in the house of Mercury, and Mercury is in the house of Mars. So this brings her additional help and protection even from the malefic planet of Mars. So many of the things that she does that do impact her negatively, it actually flips and becomes a positive for her. Although, initially there is a lot of pain that she experiences, but because these two houses, these two planets are protecting the house of the other, it gives an opportunity for her to be able to use this energy more beneficially. So it is, again, a sextile, and the sextile has the energy of Venus already. So Venus rules sextile. So the energy of coming together and getting along is automatically here with a sextile. But you have these two planets talking to each other and communicating to each other and giving each other what they need for this house to be able to operate at its best. So we can see here that she was born with this gift here to be able to be quick with her communication. She has Uranus making a conjunction to Mercury in the 11th house of friends and hopes and acclaim and awards and rewards for your hard work that you have done in the 10th house and following your reputation. So Mercury conjunct Uranus brings a brilliance. And even though a lot of times we see her acting really silly, and then we hear, the way that she speaks and so forth. But if you listen to her in her interviews when she is calm and not being, not bringing forth that comedic side, you can hear a deep intellect. You can hear um, someone who is filled with hope, and that's where that Jupiter shows up. You can hear the hope that she has, and she is, a Sagittarius sun, and so you can hear that Sagittarian energy, that hope come forth, and then you can hear that she is well studied. So when we have Mercury in the sign of Scorpio, automatically we have a person who is able to do deep research and to study deeply on things, and to uncover that which has been hidden. And with Uranus there, she's able to have quick insight, quick brilliance, and be able to pierce through the darkness and see the truth of situations. So she was born with that gift. And then we have these two malefics that are here. We have Saturn here in the ninth house, but Saturn is in sect, SECT. Saturn is in a diurnal chart, so even though he is still a malefic, even though he still brings blockages and causes things to be slower, he is in sect in a day chart, so he does not um, bring harshness as harsh as possibly could, because he is in sex. Also, he is here with Jupiter, and Jupiter is standing between Saturn and Mars. So Jupiter, with all of his goodness in a day chart, is bringing a lot of benefit to this ninth house. And the ninth house in ancient astrology is the house of God. It is a house that is greatly beneficial. It brings a lot of luck to it. It involves foreign travel. It involves speaking. So this is a house. The third and the ninth house are houses of belief, houses of foreign travel, houses. It is a house. The ninth house is a house of balance and bringing things to justice. So all of this is associated with the ninth house, and we can see all of this playing out in Tiffany's life as she moves forward. Now, Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, so she has a Capricorn rising, and so the ruler of her first house is in the ninth. So immediately you know that this will be a person who will travel. If they do not physically travel, they will travel in their studies. They will travel by understanding higher knowledge, higher wisdom at some point in the life, and probably later because it is associated with Saturn. And Saturn generally brings rewards later on in life, 40, 45, 50, and maybe even after that. So we automatically know, we know through her life that she did not come into prominence as early as Whitney did. When I studied Whitney at 21, Whitney boosted into prominence. She had a natal chart that showed that promise, it showed that potentiality for that to happen. So um, with Tiffany, she did not come into prominence until 37. And so she had Saturn to bring the slowness there to her in this lucky house. Then she has Pluto in the 10th house. So immediately we know that this is someone who is not able to really work for someone else necessarily. They need to be free, they need to be independent because Pluto is about power and control. Okay, Pluto is about being able to make the decisions. That's what Pluto needs in the 10th house, make the decisions for one's own life. And then as I watched interviews of Tiffany talking about her past, talking about when she was in foster care, she talked about how they were trying to make her sleep in a bed that she didn't want to sleep in. And for 8 hours, she stood on a box telling them why she would not sleep in the bunk bed and did not do it. She would rather sleep on the floor. And so it did not matter. No one could dominate her. She had to make her own decisions. She also talked about she was not able to read. She was not able to read well until she was in high school, and that had to do a lot with the childhood and the challenges that she had in her childhood. So we can see Saturn. It was a so she was not able to read for a long time. So we have Saturn here in this house of communication, still associated with this third ninth house axis. So typically we look at the third house as it relates to early childhood learning, learning to read and write early. We look at the third house for that. But we see the ruler of the third is here with Saturn. Even though they are not close in degree, they are still in this house together. So their energies are blended. So we have the energies of Saturn and Jupiter and Mars blended together, and it is also affecting early childhood learning and her ability to read early. Well, we have this beautiful sextile again, of the energy of Venus happening here between Saturn and Mercury. So she had a teacher, ninth house, rules teachers, and Jupiter is here. Jupiter represents our teachers and gurus. So she had a teacher while she was in high school that said, "No, ma'am, you will learn how to read." And she worked with her. There's that Venusian energy of the sextile happening, and she was able to learn to read and write well. And of course, it was not difficult for her, but she did need someone to help her because Saturn with Jupiter slowed down that ability for her to learn initially. And so when her teacher stepped up and helped her, and the teacher was strict on her, there we see Jupiter and Saturn together, and said, "No, you will learn to read," and took the time and pushed her to be able to do that, then she was able to learn to read. Okay. And so we have this 10th house. Venus is the ruler of Libra. So we have Venus here in the first house. So we have the ruler of the 10th house in the first, ruler of the 10th in the first. So that and Pluto is there as well. So this is an indication that this is a person who will come to prominence, who will come to power and prominence in their lifetime, because we have the ruler of the 10th house in the first house. And then we have the ruler of the first house in the ninth house. And the ancients put these three houses together again, the ninth, the 10th, and the 11th, because it is the ninth house where you begin to take on your higher studies and your higher training to prepare you for the work that you will do, where you will be seen in the 10th house of prominence. And then the 11th house represents the rewards that you will receive from doing this type of work. Okay. So then we have the sun in the 12th house, and I'm going to talk about the sun in the 12th house on the next slide. Okay, so now we are looking at the annual perfection for the ninth house for Tiffany at the age of 8, and this was in 1988. So when we look at annual perfections, it is an ancient timing tool that was used to identify uh, beforehand an area of life that would be highlighted for the native of the birth chart, so that you can be aware that this would be either an area of challenge for you during this year, or you could know that there would be an opportunity or a window for you to walk through so that you can accomplish some particular goals that you want to accomplish during this time. So during with the annual perfections, the house that is highlighted for that year has a ruler. So for Tiffany in this chart, her ninth house is she was in a ninth house annual perfection at the age of 8 in 1988. So Mercury was the time lord ruler. So that means that Mercury operates with more power in the chart than he normally would. So in modern astrology, we are taught that, at any time these houses are always active. Well, the ancients understood through their particular timing tools, one being the annual perfection, another being a zodiacal release, that there are particular times and years that these houses are or have extra energy, or a gate is opened for that house to be more operative, for the positive or for the more negative, or a blending of both. And so for this ninth house, Mercury would be the planet that stands the strongest during this year, because we are looking at a 1 year timing system with this annual perfection. So during this year, Virgo is highlighted. So Mercury, whatever is happening with Mercury in the natal chart, the houses that he rules, and by transit will be affecting Tiffany anytime she is at a ninth house annual perfection. And so this comes around every 12 years for us, for all of us. At the age of 8, we all have a ninth house annual perfection year. Okay. So for Tiffany, it's in the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is the time lord. So whatever is happening with Mercury, again, via transit or in the chart, it's going to highlight her life. And so the annual perfection and the planets are heralding, giving notice, giving signification, giving an omen, giving a sign that um, the houses of Mercury and Mercury within the chart will be bringing up significant issues and things of consideration for this year. So in this house of Virgo, we also have Mars, we have the North Node, we have Jupiter, we have Saturn. So all of these planets and their prospective houses will also be brought into play in this year. So, in this year, we know based on Tiffany's interviews and her book that she released in 2017, that her mother was in a horrible accident. Her stepfather, as he told Tiffany later, he cut the brake lines in her mother's car in hopes that her mother and Tiffany and her brothers and sisters would all be in the car and would all be killed. Well, as it happens, the children were not in the car, but her mother was in the car. And as her mother was in the car driving, she hit the brakes, and the brakes did not work. And she had a horrible accident that did not take her life, but her head went through the windshield and it caused her brain damage. She also went into a state of bipolarism and schizophrenia. And Tiffany was then left to take on the role of parent to her mother and to her siblings. And so we can see that in the chart, as Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. Mercury is sitting here at Scorpio with Uranus. And Mercury is also the ruler of Gemini. So oftentimes, the moon will represent the mother, but not all the time. The sun can sometimes represent the father, but not all of the time. It just depends on the chart, depends on the situation. But in this situation, the moon did represent Tiffany's mother. And so when Mercury as the time lord was highlighted in this chart, so was the sixth house. Now the sixth house, as the ancients called it, is it's called the joy of Mars. So we know that Mars is the lesser malefic, and Mars is sitting here next to the north node and is making a square to the moon. And the moon has no protection. There is no trine energy that is happening with the moon, and nor is there any mutual reception, because the moon is the ruler of Cancer, and there is no protection from the midheaven or anything for this moon. But there was some protections that happened for Tiffany and her siblings, because Jupiter is sitting here next to Mars, and so the children were not in the car that day. But we find that Mars is the house where Mars finds his joy. The sixth house is a house that is associated with illness of the body, that is associated with enemies, associated with open enemies. And again, as we said, her Tiffany's stepfather. Here we have Mercury in Scorpio, and it is affecting this sixth house. So for Tiffany, again, he had an undercover plot going to kill her mother and the children. And in fact, again, this sixth house is the house of open enemies. It is the house of illness to the body. So we can see that that was triggered during this particular annual perfection. And it also affected this 12th house. The 12th house is called the joy of Saturn. And the 12th house is a house of loss. It's a house of mental illness. It is a house of institutions such as jails and such as mental institutions and hospitals. So for Tiffany's mother, again, she experienced bipolarism and schizophrenia. And Tiffany had to become the mother. Here we have this first house of Capricorn, Venus there. Tiffany became the caregiver for her mother and her siblings. She had to take on all of the cooking. She had to take on teaching her mother how to walk again, how to feed herself, how to tie her shoes. And she also had to take care of her siblings. So when this house was activated, it also activated Saturn, Tiffany's first house. It also activated the second house, which you know causes questions um, of stability and safety and possessions. So all of this was highlighted. The first and the second house were highlighted because of Saturn. Jupiter, his house here of Pisces, and his house of Sagittarius were highlighted. But Jupiter, the third house, has to do with the siblings. So for Tiffany, the Jupiter protected her siblings from this accident at this time. And then, um, but we see that the square here to Jupiter and Mars lent itself to her mother needing or being involved in mental illness, or mental illness making itself apparent at this time due to this accident. Then for Mars, Mars is not only the ruler of Scorpio, but also the ruler of the fourth house. So the fourth house has to do with the family. So all of this was impacted because of this accident. Because of this accident. And then Tiffany's ability to communicate, as we talked about, to be able to read, was impacted by this accident too, because she spent so much time having to take care of her mother and her siblings. Okay, so now when Tiffany was 12 years old in 1995, she entered a first house annual perfection year. So at the age of 12, for all of us, we will be back at the first house annual perfection year. So this for her is in the sign of Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn. So Saturn is the time lord ruler for this year of her life in 1995. So at this time, there was a report that was sent up to, as Tiffany told it in an interview that I watched, she said that her brother had gone to school with clothes on that were that smelled like urine, and so the teachers called CPS, so the social workers got involved and came out to the house, and she and her siblings were taken away from their mother. Their mother was placed in handcuffs, taken to jail, and then ultimately put in a mental institution. And she and her siblings were taken into foster care. And she said that um, they took them to separate homes. So she went to a house alone, and then two other siblings were sent to another house, and then the two boys were taken to another house. So they were in three separate places. And so for her, this was a very painful time, to say the least. But again, we have Saturn here, who is the time lord of the year. And so the houses that are affected are the first and the second house. And not only that, because Saturn is here with these other planets, all of this comes into play as well. So we have, if we talk about Saturn's house, we talk about the body, and Venus is here as well. So Venus's houses will be affected by this change and transition as well. So we can see this. So with her body herself, she was moved and she had to go to another place. Venus can represent sisters. It can represent any of the women that are in your life. So her sisters were separated from her as well. And Saturn is an energy of isolation. Is an energy of isolation. So Saturn brought isolation from Tiffany, or between Tiffany and her siblings. So they were isolated. Tiffany was more isolated than the other siblings because the other siblings went together in a pair of two. But Tiffany here's was isolated, alone from her siblings, whom she had been with all of her life, and whom she had taken on the role of mother. So we can see that isolation coming in here from Saturn, and that is, one of the challenging sides of Saturn. So her Venus again is here, and so this is affecting her reputation in the world now, because Venus rules Libra, Venus rules Taurus. So for her, her reputation changed because she was no longer, a part of this family. Now she's a foster kid. So her reputation in the world changes to that of a foster kid, while Saturn is the Lord of the year. We can see that through this tie here to Venus coming into, is sitting here in the first house. And then the second house is highlighted because Venus also rules Aquarius. So the second house, again, is the possessions and your feeling of safety that you have and stability that you have. So all of this was shaken up. under Saturn's lordship. And so this is heralded during this time. Again, I don't have the dates, the actual date that they were taken out of the home. If I had the actual dates, more like I did when I did the astrological study of Whitney Houston, that allowed me to bring in some of the transits that were happening in the sky to be able to indicate exactly what was happening on a particular day. But we know that this annual perfection year of Capricorn. And so Saturn, of course, is leading out, and Saturn is a malefic, even though he does better during the day. He operates better during in day charts. He operates better in day charts. He still is a malefic. He is the greater malefic. So this year he brought isolation for her and her sisters. Um, because he is here with these other planets, we see that it affected her siblings because Jupiter again rules the third house. So this theme here again is happening. So anytime these planets are activated, it's going to affect her siblings and it's going to affect her home. Just like we talked about during the annual perfection year for her as an 8-year-old. So it affects that. It also affects Mercury because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. So Mercury is affected. So this 11th house is affected. So there was a change that was brought to her network and the people that were around her in her daily life. And then again, the home was affected. Fourth house was affected here for her in a challenging way. Okay, so at the age of 15 in 1995, Tiffany entered into an annual perfection year of the fourth house, which for her is the sign of Aries. So Aries is ruled by Mars. So Mars becomes the Time Lord ruler for this 15th year of life. So for that whole year, Mars is standing strong, and Mars is um, leading out, and this fourth house is highlighted. Again, we have the same thing. When this area, one of these planets is highlighted, all of them are highlighted. So in this year, Tiffany and her siblings were released from foster care, and they were able to go home, fourth house, and stay with her grandmother. And so this began to shift things for Tiffany. And so, as she went home, she was able to go back to school. And then the next year, which I don't have, I didn't create a slide for this, but I think that it's really important. That next year was a fifth house annual perfection year, which is ruled by Venus. So that's going to highlight this fifth house area, and it's also going to highlight this 10th house area. So for her, when she was 16, as she said in an interview, that with the social workers, they continued to check up on them, even though they were allowed to go back to her grandmother. She felt like she was having some mental challenges, and so she gave her an option. She can go to get psychotherapy, or go to an institution, and or she could go to a program that they had that would teach it was comedians that were giving their time to children in the Los Angeles area who needed help, who needed mentoring. So there was this mentoring program that was opened up, and so she said that she didn't want to be involved in the psychotherapeutic drugs, so she chose to go to this mentor program, and that began to highlight this area for her. That's the fifth house of creativity, of joy. The fifth house is the house, the joy of Venus. So it is a house of pleasure and creativity and laughter and theater, theatrics, and all of that is highlighted in the fifth house. So this is at the age of 16. This was highlighted for her. It also highlighted this 10th house area for her. So this is where it was during these years, during her high school years, that she began to see, as she said, that she could make people laugh. That she realized that this was a gift that she had, that she was able to tap in to the pain that she had experienced here. She was able to use her Mercury in Scorpio, and she was able to work with the pain that she had. And that's the thing with Mercury in Scorpio, or any of the Scorpio planets. A lot of times, if the pain, because Scorpio, people who have strong placements in Scorpio do experience a lot of pain, or they are born with a lot of trauma and pain within the DNA from an ancestral line. But the way to heal any of the Scorpio challenges and pain that can be so deep within is to bring it from the dark into the light. And for Tiffany, intuitively, she has been able to do that. And so she realized early on that when she was able to clown and to be silly, to use this ninth house area of communication, this ninth and third house, right? Ruler of the third and the ninth, when she was able to use that, stabilize it by the Saturn, working at it, cultivating it. She had mentors, Jupiter. She had teachers and mentors. She had Richard Pryor as a mentor. She had Bill Bellamy. She had so many others who undergirded her and taught her and trained her how to cultivate this gift of comedy, using that gift of speech and that Sagittarius energy. A lot of times, Sagittarians are really very comedic type people. They can be. And she definitely is. And so she was able to be trained to use this energy in a powerful way and bring it forth to the world. So she started doing this in high school. She started showing her leadership abilities with the school plays and all of this type of thing. And then this particular program that she chose to go into, because that's the thing. So this annual perfection year opened up for her fifth house, and she had an option. She had an option where she could get some psychotherapy, or she could come over here and be trained to learn to work with this gift of communication. And that's what she chose. And then it set her even further forward on her trajectory to be an amazing and successful comedian and actress. Okay, so now we are moving forward. I have a chart here of the eclipses from 2006, just to indicate how the eclipses herald or make the announcement, or they stand as a sign or a signal of the change that is at the door, or the opportunities that are available. When we have a lunar eclipse, it brings closures. It's just like the full moon, because the lunar eclipse is going to be a full moon. And so there is something that is ending. And oftentimes, more times than not, when there is a lunar eclipse, there is a bridge that is severed. So you cannot go back to the old, but you must go forward on this new path that has been carved out. And so these eclipses are making an announcement. Okay, the door is open for you to go this particular way. The energy support you for this particular change, contingent upon the house that is being affected by this eclipse. And so in 2006, we had the eclipses that were going back and forth between Virgo and Pisces. And we see here that there was one here in Aries. But 2006, 2007, we had those real hits between Virgo and Pisces over and over. So that was Tiffany's house of communication highlighted. All of the training that she had received and the practicing that she was doing in 2005. She had an opportunity to do some TV. In 2006 we see that she was on Bill Bellamy's Who's Got Jokes, and so this was really her getting on the stage and being seen and it being recorded and so forth. So these eclipses at this time heralded this change for her, and introduced her to a new set of teachers and a new strength for her communication ability. And it opened up new doors for her to be able to use these gifts and talents that she has. So let's see, we had this first one, March 14, 2006, in Virgo at 24 degrees of Virgo. So that is right here on this Saturn. And Saturn is the ruler of her first house. So it heralded the fact that her body, herself, would be moving into new arenas in this area of communication, of her ability to be a comedian. It heralded new strength and opportunities and doors being opened for that. So, and then when it went into Pisces, when there was the eclipse in Pisces, at 15 degrees of Pisces, lunar eclipse, there was an ending. Something ended here, um, probably with her life just within the local community, because it was at that time that she started mingling and socializing with other people who were outside of her traditional community, in which she was raised. And so, and then another solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Virgo, September 22nd, again hitting that Saturn. So it was heralding the change for her life. The first house is called the helm, like the helm of the ship. So the ruler of the first house, the ruler of the helm of this ship, was being affected, and there was a message given to it by the sun, the herald or the signal. Okay, it's time to change. This door has been opened. So that's what we see with these eclipses here. But I want to talk, because I did not make a particular slide for this, but I want to talk about this Mars that is here making a conjunction to the north node of the moon. And so when the north node of the moon is in a house, as the ancients would have it, in a house with any other planets, that north node is intaking that energy. It is swallowing up the energy of the other planets. And so the north node itself is such a huge, huge player. It is a huge deal. It has so much power. It has a power to eclipse all of the other planets. But with the North Node, it soaks up the energy of the planets that are there with it. So, when you listen to Tiffany in her interviews, she talks about the fact that she was raped by a police cadet in 2008. When I go over that particular slide, you will see that she married a man who was a private investigator. And so that Martian energy really impacted her. When she went into foster care, she was molested by one of the men. So that North Node really soaked up so much of that Martian energy with her. Of course, it soaked up all of the other planets too, the energy of the other planets. But you can hear in great detail how she experienced the abuse associated with Mars, even the abuse that she experienced from her mother. Is seen through that North Node and that Mars, that energy being soaked up by the dragon's head, which is the North Node, insatiably so. So Mars, is associated with violence. It's associated with cutting. It is associated with aggression. And so she experienced so much of that in her early ages. And she said that she feels safe on stage because everybody can see. It's not a secret in a private place where ugly things can happen. And that's why she feels at her best when she is in the limelight and when she is expressing what she has to say in the public for others to see. And she said that police cadet who raped her, he offered her a ride home. He said, do you need a ride home? And she was just, okay, sure, because he was in police uniform. And then, the police are associated with Mars. And, I think that that's really significant that Martian energy showed up in that way for her. Okay, so I just wanted to make a note of that. Okay, so now we are looking again at an annual perfection year. And so now we are looking at the fifth house annual perfection year for Tiffany at the age of 28. Now, we looked at it before for her at the age of 16, but now she's back to it because every 12 years it will go back to that particular house. And so in 2008, she married William Stewart. Venus is highlighted for her. And so the fifth house rules, love relationships, falling in love and sex and all of the pleasures. And so she met him, they fell in love, and she married him. And when she married him, her reputation in the world, 10th house, because Venus is the ruler of Taurus. Venus is sitting here in her first house of self. So Venus is triggered by this, is highlighted. Venus is the ruler of this year of her life. And so Venus is here in the first house. So her herself and where she is moving herself, Venus is at the helm, and her reputation in the world changes because she goes from being single to married. She divorces William in 2011 and remarries him again in 2011. And I think that they divorced the second time in 2012. I believe that's right. Um, but when she married him again, the seventh house was highlighted the second time she married him. And again, in this relationship, as we talked about before, he investigated for her. She married him. She said that she married him. She would marry him if he found her father, and her father was a citizen of Eritrea, which is in Africa near Ethiopia, and they received their independence from Ethiopia. So they were at one point under the control, Eritrea was under the control of Ethiopia. And so she said, if you help me find my father, I will marry you. So he did, and she married him. And the relationship was very tumultuous, as she talks about in her book. He was very violent towards her, very abusive towards her, very jealous and controlling. She talked about one time she wanted to go and talk with her comedian friends. They were at a hotel, and she wanted to go to the lobby and talk with them, and he was choking her, didn't want her to go. So they had all of those types of experiences. And again, that highlights that Mars with the North Node just bringing in, this type of violence towards her in her life. Okay. Okay, so we're going to jump forward to the annual perfection of the second house for Tiffany at age 37. So again, Saturn rules the second house because Saturn rules Aquarius, and Saturn also rules her first house. So um, these houses are highlighted again. The second house has to do with your income that you earn, your feeling of safety, the possessions that you have. Okay, in ancient astrology, it supports and undergirds the first house of self. So, how do you undergird yourself? It is through the income that you earn. So, for Tiffany, this Saturn right here is in the ninth house, and it is on the cusp of the 10th house. This first house is also activated because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, and then Venus is activated as well, which is the ruler of the 10th house and also the ruler of the fifth house. So we talked about this before, how that fifth house is about theatrics, the things that we love and take pleasure in. This 10th house is her career and reputation in the world. So, all of the work that she has done is coming to a high point for her during this second house annual perfection year, because on July 21st of 2017 Girls Trip was released, and so all of the work that she had been doing behind the scenes in various movies, that work Saturn released her and said, okay, here is your reward for all of the work that you have done, all of the training and the tutelage that you have received, ninth house, and working on her joy. She brought that forward and she received her reward um, at that time because the movie was a huge hit and she came into prominence and has been in celebration ever since. Okay, when I look at this next slide, it makes me wonder if, in fact, Tiffany has an astrologer on her team, because we're talking about the date that she released her book, The Last Black Unicorn, which was a New York Times bestseller. She released it 2 days after her birthday, which was released in a third house annual perfection year, which for her is in the Pisces, which is Pisces house ruled by Jupiter. And so the third house, of course, has to do with all communication, manual communication, writing short books. The ninth house has to do with longer novels and so forth. But Jupiter, of course, brought the expansion to it. And again, it was a number one bestseller. It brought her that much more acclaim. She was already riding on a high from the movie that was released just a few months earlier. And then she released a book, and that brought her into that much more prominence for her communication abilities and skills. Um, and so this was really powerful. At this point, I want to highlight something that I did not talk about before, which is that her son is in the 12th house conjunct Neptune. I talked about the ability that it gives her an ability to act and to become the character that she needs to become. This Mercury and Uranus helps her remember the lines very easily, but the Sun, Neptune helps her in that area. But as it relates to her father, her father left her mother when she was 3 years old. And so, oftentimes, when you see someone who is without their father or male energy, there will be Mars in the 12th or Sun in the 12th. or the sun will be with Neptune, or Mars will have some kind of an aspect, challenging aspect to Neptune, because Mars represents the male energy. And that is why I say that sometimes the sun can represent the father, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's Mars. It just depends on the nature of the relationship. But for her, this son is representing her father who left, and so she didn't have her father. And a lot of times when you have Sun and Neptune together, it can show that you don't see things clearly. You don't see people clearly. Oftentimes, your perceptions of the past can be skewed a little bit. When you have Sun Neptune connected together. Your sight is blurred because Neptune can blur the sight, of course, and bring a fog over things. And so she has that. And then her father, again, is a citizen, or was a citizen of Eritrea. And so she, highlighting another thing about her ninth house, she recently went over to Eritrea and got her citizenship there. So that is a ninth house topic that she, again, Saturn is involved with for her body. The ruler of her first is in the ninth. So she connected with her Eritrea citizenship, and then she celebrated them, um, and has embraced so much of their culture. She, again, we talk about religion, we talk about foreign places and foreign things when we talk about the ninth house. So she embraced the religion of her father, which was Jewish, and she had a bat mitzvah. Um, Around this time. And so all of that is highlighting that ninth house. So I wanted to make sure that I brought that up at this point. Okay, so let's talk about the big chop with Tiffany Haddish. So July 7th, 2020, she cut off all of her hair live on Instagram. So let's look at what transits that were happening then, that would signify or send a message or send an omen that this area of life has been triggered for her. So she is, now this is something that I did not type on this, um, type on my slide here, but she is going through a Pluto square because Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn right now, in transiting her first house. It is making a square to her natal Pluto at 21 degrees. So Pluto right now is at 22 degrees. So when she cut her hair in the summer, Pluto was in aspect to that 21 degrees. So she has that going on. So a Pluto square is a really hard aspect, and it makes you question um, what it is that you are doing and what you need to do more deeply. There's questions of power and control that come to the forefront. Power and control over my body and how I'm looking. This is our first house, 10th house square, because the hair is such a sensitive area, and it is such a powerful area. It is signified with glory oftentimes. So this was her taking back her power. And I was listening to her in an interview, and she said, I wanted to see all of me. I wanted to see all of myself. I wanted to know if I have moles on my head. I want to know if there are any marks or anything. So that Pluto square, um, Pluto transit in the first house is bringing up deep issues, probably that she is not even able to really articulate, but we see it because it is affecting her first and 10th house for the public to see. Okay, so she's going through that Pluto square. And then there was a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius affecting her sun. It was at 15 degrees on June 5th of 2020. So just um, a month before there was this lunar eclipse, because and we know that the power of an eclipse can last, 6 weeks before, 6 weeks after. We start seeing things that are being heralded by the eclipses that are coming through. And then, so this being in the 12th house, this lunar eclipse, so we're talking about something coming to an end. Okay, and then a lunar eclipse is a full moon, and oftentimes that full moon will trigger deep emotion. So it being an eclipse is something even more powerful, and it was conjunct her sun. And so the 12th house, we know, is a house of losses. It is a house that can affect us mentally. And then the lunar eclipse oftentimes can affect us mentally because it will reach a deep place of emotions within us. So Tiffany will be going through these eclipses over this next year, in the signs of Sagittarius and Gemini. So it will be affecting her sixth and 12th house axis. So there is a herald coming in, signifying there could be issues with the physical health and mental health. And so I was watching an interview, and she did a interview with Lunel, and people were saying that she might be going through some kind of mental challenges because she cut her hair in that way on Instagram. And she said, "I'm not going through, anything mental." She said, "I have a psychiatrist that I or a yeah, a psychologist that I speak to all the time. I have somebody." And so, these eclipses, because, she has openly said that she has dealt with challenges of mental health. And I hesitate to say that because I know that that is so sensitive for people when they talk about having mental health challenges. But she has said that she has experienced those, in her youth, and rightfully so, with everything that she has been through, everything that happened to her mothers. No shame in that. But these eclipses could be heralding, and probably are heralding, a that these areas need to be taken more care of. The sixth house and the 12th house, the physical health and the mental health, need to be guarded more safely at this time, because there are energies that are coming in, and situations and life situations that could be happening that could affect her physical health and or mental health. And if your mind is stressed, it will affect your physical being. If your physical being is not healthy, it will affect your mind. So the two go together. And her having these eclipses in the 6th and 12th, is something that definitely needs to be paid attention to, because the universe is saying something. And Pluto, the Pluto square to the first house, because that's the helm. Oftentimes you can see mental health issues with the first house, if something is there. And she's in the first house, has gone through a lot, the past few years, with Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter, the conjunctions, and the squares to Mars happening in her fourth house. So she has been experiencing all of that, and this year. So I'm not surprised to see that, and I'm sure that we might see more because she is such a prominent figure. And then she is also having, not only is she having the Pluto square going on right now, Pluto square Pluto, she is also having, which these are the midlife midlife transits, okay, that we all will experience. Okay, so she is also having the transiting Uranus oppose natal Uranus at this time. And so that's why, it is known as the midlife crisis. So, everyone who reaches, middle age, 39, 40 to 45 are going to go through these big outer planets. Uranus making an opposition to Uranus and Pluto squaring the natal Pluto. So, and these are the things that trigger you to ask questions about what is it that I am doing? Am I being honest with myself? Am I being true to myself? And what do I need to release? And what needs to be overhauled? And, what is my path? And am I on my path? And, um, this is that point for her. And so she has the Uranus, transiting Uranus opposite the natal Uranus. So her natal Uranus is here in the 11th house and conjunct Mercury. And so transiting Uranus is here. And so it's in an early degree right now. So she has about 5 more years of experiencing this opposition. And she may not even be feeling that opposition because right now Uranus is at 7 degrees. This summer, when she cut her hair, Uranus was at about 10 degrees, 10 or 9 degrees. And so her Uranus is at 22 degrees. So she will not have the exact opposition until probably, 3 or 4 years from now. And at that time, she will be exhibiting some of the energies about freedom and asking about freedom in her communication because it's with Mercury, freedom of expression and so forth. So we'll see more of this happening with Tiffany in the years to come because of these big transits that are happening. And then I'm sure we'll hear more of the story. Okay, so I could not end this astrological study without doing a synastry reading for Tiffany and Common the Rapper. And they are in this relationship, and Tiffany says it's the best relationship that she has ever been in so far. And we can see that in the synastry chart. So we're going to talk about some of the placements um, that they have together and talk about how it helps them communicate and what that feels like. So I have a birth date for Common the Rapper of March 13th, 1972, Chicago, Illinois. I do not have a birth time, and this is significant for the moon because the moon, I did a 12 noon birth time when I pulled this chart, so it would be, midway the day when I drew the chart. So since this moon is at 29 degrees of Aries, if he were born later in the day, then this moon would be in the sign of Pisces. And so that could be a thing. And that would change the relationship significantly if you are talking about living together because Tiffany has her moon in the sign of Gemini, and the moon comes into play when we talk about feeling safe together. The synastry is going to show how your planets communicate together, the how your energy jives together. And so the moon is so huge when you talk about just being at home together, sitting on the couch, or whatever it is that you like to do, whatever your moon feels most comfortable doing. You want to be with someone who has a moon that is either in trine to your moon or sextile to your moon. If the moons are square, it makes living together very, very difficult. When you are at home together, you can find yourself just arguing and fussing about most anything. You just don't feel comfortable. You just feel like you cannot relax together. So, as it relates to Tiffany and Common, If his moon is indeed in Aquarius, that is great because then the moons will be trine and they will be able to just be at home together, love talking together, love communicating. I think that his moon is actually in the sign of Aquarius because this Mercury is in Aries. And he has some humanitarian efforts about him, and so does Tiffany. They work together. With helping out the community. That's a big deal for the both of them. And Tiffany has this 11th house highlighted over here, so she would be about the humanitarian efforts and the friendship and so forth, um, and enjoying that. And so with this moon, they can talk about most anything. They can enjoy just just talking and chit chatting and laughing and being silly together. And so that is a beautiful part. And then his moon in Aquarius is going to come over to her second house. So when your partner's moon comes into your second house, this is a placement where your partner, the moon person, this in this case it would be common, would feel comfortable, would feel value by having Tiffany in his life, and she would feel the same. He would bring a feeling of stability to her. And being that Aquarius is a fixed sign, that moon coming into her second house would bring this feeling of safety. Because remember, she talked about just not feeling safe unless she was out in the public. So his moon coming into her second could have her feeling safe in the private area of their lives, away from the cameras and just feeling safe in privacy. And then, so he has his moon, his sun, which is in the sign of Pisces, and the sun is going to light up whatever area that enters into. So his sun comes into her third house. So that's going to just light up that communication because the third house rules communication. So these two together, they can laugh and talk about anything and everything. And she mentioned that their first date was an online date because it was during the COVID situation. But they started out as friends, and that third house is a friendship house, it's like you feel like family. She said that he would come over and play spades and stuff, come over to her house, and they started out as friends, just laughing and talking. And that is lined up with that moon in Aquarius because Aquarius people, they often get into relationships with people who are friends first, and if even if the relationship doesn't last, they remain friends with those people. That's a part of that Aquarian energy. And then his Venus is in Taurus, and it comes over here to her fifth house, and so does his Mars comes into her fifth house. So Venus oftentimes will represent how you show love and how you want to receive love. So it coming into her fifth house, and the fifth house is the joy of Venus. That is the best place that you can have Venus come into your partner's chart. So his Venus coming into her fifth house shows that they have so much fun together. It rules sex. Fifth house rules sex. It rules, I'm talking ancient astrology, sex, passion, all kinds of joy, anything fun that you want to do. This is in the fifth house, theatrics and playing and everything. And so, with his Mars coming in here, this is an indication that they have so much fun, and intimacy. Even when it comes to sex, they have a good time. And not only that, his Mars is making a trine to her Mars. So his Mars in Taurus is making a trine to her Mars that is in the sign of Virgo. It's absolutely beautiful. They understand how each other moves, whether it's in the bed or whether let's go to the mall or whatever it is. They have a simpatico as far as how they move together. They just understand each other innately. And then his Mercury comes into her fourth house. So, again, the fourth, his Mercury is in Aries. It comes over here into her fourth house. So that Aries in the fourth house, that Mercury in the fourth house, he is able to, when she talks to him, it feels like she is talking to a family member. When she talks to him, they are able to talk about the certain foods. They had the same type of foods that they grew up on, or my grandmother did this, or my grandmother did that too. They have the communication. The communication is such a big deal, and she feels at home talking to him about everything. She feels safe sharing and talking to him about her family in the past. And again, it's in that fourth house area where she was not feeling safe. And then he coming in and being able to communicate with her in this way makes her feel safe. And Jupiter, which is a huge deal. His Jupiter is at 5 degrees of Capricorn. It comes right over here and is conjunct her ascendant and her Venus. So Jupiter coming here together makes into her first house, makes her feel beautiful, makes her feel seen, makes her feel loved, makes it he brings all of his kindness and all of his goodness to her. And with that Jupiter coming into her Venus, like his sweetness that he gives her, he's really kind to her. And she even said that on their first date, even though they had to do it online because of COVID, he sent flowers and he sent chocolates. And she said he is just such a gentleman to her, and he wants to be because his Venus is connected to her, his Jupiter is connected to her Venus in the first house, which is absolutely beautiful. So they have a really beautiful chart as it relates to um, just being able to understand each other, being able to share deep and intimate things, and laugh and love, and just have a beautiful time together. His Saturn comes over here and makes a conjunction to her moon. And her Saturn is here in Virgo, and it is making a trine to his Mars. So you need Saturn. If you are talking about a relationship that is going to last any time, you need to have a Saturn connection to the personal planets. So his Saturn comes over here and is making a connection with her moon, and her Saturn is making a connection with his Mars. So this is a relationship that shows great potential for longevity, for just that stick to itiveness. We could stick it out, we can make it through various things. It shows with Mars to Saturn, shows a sex life that is stable and consistent. His Saturn coming to her Mars can stabilize her emotionally. It's coming into the sixth house, which can be challenging, but it can stabilize those emotions. And it's not too close. It's nine degrees apart, but it can have that effect. And I hesitate when I say that, because sometimes Saturn with the moon can be kind of cold, but um, all of the other aspects are so beautiful and so powerful that, again, on in the positive, it could be just a stabilizing for her emotionally. So she is in a fifth house annual perfection year. This started in 2019. And so the last time she married, when she married William Stewart, she was in a fifth house annual perfection year, just like she is now. And with that annual perfection year, Venus is highlighted. And Venus, of course, is linked to love and marriage. So Venus is the ruler of the fifth house. So this highlights her first house and it highlights her 10th house. And this is really significant. And it did that before when she married William Stewart. So I feel, based on what happened before, that there is a great possibility that she will marry Common, that Tiffany Haddish and Common the rapper will get married. And I think that they will get married anytime between now and 2022 because she is in this annual perfection year. I wish I had his birth time, then I would have more information. But as far as the synastry, and how the planets are looking together and the energy they have together, it looks absolutely beautiful for marriage for them. And with the fact that she is in this fifth house annual perfection year that is ruled by Venus, it is looking just absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so that is all that I have. I thank you so much for watching and listening and leaving your comments. And for those of you who like this, write me. Let me know if you have someone else that you would like for me to analyze their chart and do an astrological study on them. I would love to do it. So let me know. And I say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe O, Yod He Vav He.